Okay, hi and hello, everybody. We are trying out this kind of multi-platform streaming here for this live interview. So hopefully, as people join on and as this gets connected across the way, we can see an actual live stream and see that happening on YouTube, on Twitter, and on Facebook as well. So we are actually talking here today with one of our guests that we're bringing on here. This is Volodymyr Omelyan, and he is actually a diplomat. He is actually has a long history with Ukraine. So let's bring him in there. Hi there. How are you?
Hi.
Hi. It's so good to see you here. And I hope you're okay and safe right now. Are you?
Yes, I'm fine. Just trying to fix my camera. Yeah, just a second.
Okay.
Yep, there
Perfect.
it
We
is.
have some
Yep,
time, right? So,
yep.
okay, you have a long history with Ukraine, of course, and you were elected in 2019, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong to your position.
Actually, I became a minister in 2016, and until mid of 2019, I was performing as a minister of infrastructure of Ukraine. Yeah, that's
Okay,
right.
yeah, with the Ministry of Infrastructure of Ukraine. And so obviously, Ukraine and Russia have been fighting now for well over a week. Obviously, last week, Vladimir Putin going into Ukraine saying we're conducting a special operation. Obviously, that's not what we're seeing play out. We've seen hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians join in on this fight. You are one of them. Tell me what really fueled you to join in on this fight, Volodymyr.
It's my country, and definitely, if it's attacked by Russians or by any other enemy, my first reaction is to take firearms and to fight back. But in case of Russia, we are not fighting for a week. We are fighting with Russians for centuries.
Mhm.
And the biggest mistake of Putin that he supposed while he enters Ukraine or tries to occupy Ukraine, or as they say, to liberalize Ukraine,
Mhm.
uh, nobody welcomes him here. And there is a great resistance from ordinary people, not only from army or political elite or from some certain group of people. The
Mhm.
whole nation stood up and said, no, guys, it's our country and we are to decide what will be next with us. Should we join the European Union? Should we join NATO, or we stay as we are?
Now, with that being said, obviously you're saying that there was a push for civilians to get out and to fight for their country. Uh, why? I guess if they've been at war with Russia, battling Russia for this long, how come now people are getting involved? Why weren't there more forces in the first place since this has been ongoing?
It's difficult to say because many people on the top level, till the very last moment, didn't believe that Russia will invade physically.
Mhm.
Regardless that Biden was telling and belling on all rings since 2021 that, look, guys, US intelligence, US Congress, White House think that Russia is going to attack very soon. Get ready.
Mhm.
But many people thought, oh no, this could not be happening in 21st century. Nobody does it, especially in Europe, in that rude way. Putin does, and Putin invaded Ukraine, and Putin is doing right the same thing in Europe as he did in Syria, as he did in Chechnya, as he did in Georgia. So it's the style is totally the same, but only the situation is much different because Putin thought that it will be World War II for him, that he is fighting Nazis, as he say in Ukraine,
Mhm.
and the whole world understand right now that Nazi is, or Hitler number two is Mr. Putin, and he is telling fake stories. He is a liar. He is a killer, and he is corrupted guy, simply running for big money and big cash, dealing with some oligarchs and kind of uh, having bonuses out of Russian economy in shadow way.
Mhm. Now, you mentioned some of that fake information, some of that, propaganda that we're seeing come out. Now, there's a lot of speculation that there's propaganda from both sides. Are you seeing that in Ukraine as well, that there's kind of misinformation being shared out there and is being problematic as well in Ukraine? We know it's happening in Russia for sure.
You know, war is always about the propaganda, and if you want to win, you should use all tools. But in case of Ukraine, it's very easy to check facts. And we see that Russia is bombing cities. Putin denies that. We are not. But then you simply show videos, you show photos, you show thousands of injured or dead people, civilians, not military ones. And everybody understands that Putin is liar. Then he says, okay, I'm not invading Ukraine. It's a special operation to get rid of Nazis supported by US government which wants to rule Europe, and NATO expansion, it's a great threat to Russia. And they say, look, guy, what are you talking about? Nobody is threatening Russia at all. Is somebody occupying Russian territories? No. If you don't want expansion of NATO, okay, let's talk about that. But first, take your forces out of Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, and definitely Syria. What the hell are you doing there? So there are many propaganda tricks, and Russians are very good in that because they are doing propaganda like a number one tool for Russian empires and Soviet Union for decades. And they are very good in that until now, until recently, when European Union and United States finally realized that media is a real tool to change people's mind, and also social media and also social networks could influence a lot on elections, on economy, on different threats of society. It really works. Russia really uses, and finally world understood that it should be limited. It should be somehow also controlled, because if everybody spread fakes, so it's not propaganda, it's fake story.
Now, with that said, how can people be sure what they're seeing? Because even some things that have been shared and put out there from the Ukraine side have been pictures from the past, right? This, as you've mentioned, this has been ongoing. So, how can people sift through the fake information? What should they be looking for, or what sites or sources can people go to make sure that what they're seeing is actually real?
First of all, I would like to say thank you to all these international journalists which are with us in Ukraine those days, because they simply doing live. And during recent live reportage from Kiev, when I do not remember the channel name, but still maybe it's not that important, journalist was telling about the ongoing war, what is happening, and the Russian missile just hit behind his back multi-story building. So it was visible for everybody. So it's impossible to Photoshop it or to make a kind of Hollywood movie, because it's live. And definitely you can argue, even Putin says that CNN is to spread fake stories, and Russia TV is the only source you can rely on. So it might be true for some Russians which are invading Ukraine right now to kill Ukrainians. But I believe that in civilized world, still CNN is number one, or at least among the top stories. And you are, as a journalist, you are also telling truth about your emotions. How do you feel the situation? What is your reaction, and how would you interact with that?
So let me just pull up a video here on the screen, and we can kind of talk about what we need to be looking at and things like that. So I don't know if we'll be able to talk because this is kind of a trial and error. So let me see what this does. So as we pop back in here, that video that we were looking at, that's in Kiev, right? That is the police headquarters. So something like that comes out. How do I know that that is happening now, that did not happen 6 years ago?
Because 6 years ago, Putin only invaded eastern part of Ukraine and occupied Crimea. And right now it's a live show for the whole Ukraine. So he invaded from the east, he invaded from the north, and he invaded from the south. And in my state of mind, I would never expect that Russia bombs Kharkiv, second largest city in Ukraine,
Mhm.
or last 3 days is attacking Kiev with missiles. And only thanks of our anti-missile system, almost all those rockets are down, but still the danger is present. So
Mhm.
it's not about to destroy somebody's army, which is also ridiculous in 21st century to fight with armies, but still he's attacking civilians. He wants to put threat on ordinary people to say that if you want to survive, you should immigrate. You should forget about this country and take my rules to run this country right or bad. And I believe that it will never happen in Ukraine that we will follow Putin example or we will agree with Putin rules he would like to impose. Plus, it's a big threat for Western society because Ukraine is not the final destination. Next day, when Ukraine is occupied, he will move further to the west. Poland, Romania, Baltic states, Hungary.
Now this
Maybe he
that's
dreams about
obviously
Berlin and
now that's
yeah.
obviously just assuming, right? We don't have anything
No, no, no.
laid out, or do
It's
we? Do we
no,
have his plan?
no, no, no. It's not assuming. Just listen to his words. What he said in the very beginning. So it's not about conquering Ukraine. It's about NATO borders to be back to 1997
Mhm.
without Poland, without Hungary, without Bulgaria, half of the Eastern Europe. And that he said that, look, we are not happy with the US approach toward world order. Let's make it different way. So right now, it's a kind of real third world war is ongoing.
Mhm.
The only problem is that Russia is fighting the world and Ukraine fights Russia on its own for the world. And this is the situation we are in because Putin will never stop with Ukraine. It's not that type of guy. He wants to restore Russian empire. And Russian empire used to have Poland under its auspices, used to have part of Germany under its auspices, and many other countries, plus Finland.
Mhm. Now, Volodymyr, can you tell me why some, and I don't know, you're obviously on the ground there. You're obviously able to talk with some folks, and you've got civilian military in your battalion. Can you tell me why people would be saying and posting out there and putting it out there that the Ukrainian military is attacking their own people? Do you know why that would be kind of a rumor that's being spread? Because a lot of people are saying that some of the attacks are coming from the Ukrainian military.
No, it's a total fake story. It was never the case.
Okay. Now,
I do not know what did you hear that about,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
but
Is there's so
according to
much
my
information.
experience, and yeah, I was present from the very first beginning of war between Ukraine and Russia in 2014,
Mhm.
and I was every second month on the front line. And it was never the case that Ukrainian militaries were fighting Ukrainians. It was always the case that Russian occupants came to Ukrainian soil, took our land, simply killed many people of Ukrainian origin, and said that, on this territory, there would never have been the case of Ukrainian people. There were always Soviet people or Russian speaking people, which is fake, because first they invade, then they kill, and then they make the rest to believe in Russian world.
Okay. Now you were talking about the plan that Putin has out there, the things that he's been saying. Obviously, he did say if NATO moves east, that's when he's going to kind of move in. And that's exactly what we're seeing, right? Because right now Ukraine is actively applying to be part of NATO. The UN General Assembly has overwhelmingly condemned Russia. We have a lot of different sanctions that are being put into place, but still things are not slowing down. Let me show, we can continue to talk over these images here. So this is that convoy, Volodymyr, that we've been following. And obviously you've seen this as well. So this is a Russian convoy that spreads about 40 miles. And from what we understand, and if you have any new information, let me know. But from what I understand, this convoy has not moved for days. So obviously something that you are watching. What concerns do you have with that? That is just right outside of the border there, all the way to Belarus. So what are you What are you guys watching down there on the ground with that convoy?
They are not moving because they are stopped by Ukrainian army. In Putin's idea, and according to his military plans, it was only 2 days to occupy Ukraine and to capture Kiev. The maximum they gave at the very beginning 3 days for Kiev to surrender. We are fighting the 9 days, and they do not progress at all. His army is disoriented. The soldiers are not motivated. They are unpaid right now, and they simply surrender to Ukrainian army in thousands. But still, army is huge, and definitely, as Russians say that we are second army in the world. You should respect that. We do know that, and definitely it doesn't make us happy, but we are fighting good. And Kiev is not even encircled yet. It's a big threat, this column you are mentioning, and we do take care about that, and we know about that. But still, I believe with the new supply of Western weapons, we will be able to break them down.
So right now, the Polish border still has not been breached at all. Is there concern that that could happen over the coming days, or are they holding forces back pretty strongly in the western side of Ukraine as well?
It's difficult to say. On one side, Polish border is safe because of NATO, and Putin respects that as well. He doesn't want to confront with NATO at this stage when Ukraine is not occupied. But on the other hand, we do remember what he did last year together with Lukashenko, sending thousands of illegal migrants taken from Syria, Iran, and other countries, illegally transported to Belarus, and then they were storming simply Polish border. Were they attacking NATO at that time? I believe yes, because they were taken there. It's not just a personal wish of people which are in need. You take a well-paid plane, you pay cash to Belarusian authorities to bring you to the border, and then they say you to attack the NATO border. Definitely, it's not the human crisis. It's not the refugee crisis. It's about well-planned attack. So what will come next with Putin and how he will approach Polish border, I do not know, but I wish you will never check it, because we together should fight Kremlin and should win over the Kremlin plans.
Now, obviously, you're talking about your involvement, how you have gotten involved, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to chat this afternoon, because so many civilians have gotten involved, and it's the territorial defense forces, to my knowledge, and that's the group
Yep.
that works with the militias throughout Ukraine. Is that correct?
Yes, it's a kind of we have regular army, which is common for all countries, and then at the stage of war, it was recently established kind of territorial forces, which are under the army, but they also make almost all operations which are under army control. We evacuate people, we fight with Russian agents, we looking for paratroopers and kill them. So there are a lot of nice instruments to get to know about.
So when you signed on to do this, obviously you traded in the suit and tie. You're a diplomat. You go over here and you're
Yeah,
fighting.
that's why I'm looking like that. Yeah.
Right. So what was that trade? I mean, there's a lot of civilians taking up arms here that have never fired a gun before. Laws against guns in Ukraine are pretty strict. So what did that training look like for you and other civilians when you said, you know what, I'll go fight?
Uh, for me, it was easier because I know how to shoot and how to kill, so it was not a kind of big discovery for me. But for at least 30% of territorial defense soldiers, definitely it's a brand new adventure.
Hmm.
And
And these are some
according
of
to
your
my,
battalion members here that we've got up on the
pardon me?
screen. Those are some of your battalion members
Okay.
there on the screen that we're looking at. So those are civilians as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that maybe 30-50% of them were civilians without any military experience. But to my knowledge of last 8 years, military experience comes very fast if you survive in the first battle. So the only issue is to survive, and then you learn very fast.
Now, I read somewhere as well that civilians were kind of giving up space in their home to be a staging area if people need it, but also to be a space to put together Molotov cocktails and things like that, like homemade explosives. Have you been hearing that as well? Have you seen that at all?
Yes, we also practice that stuff, but I would say that it's much better and much more efficient to collect javelins and stingers than Molotov cocktails, because javelins work much better and much more efficient. But still, yes, we have a lot of different stuff from previous wars we are using against Russians. But our main priority is to preserve people's life. Doesn't matter they are soldiers, volunteers, or ordinary civilians. It's like a biggest issue for us, not somebody is hurted or killed or injured.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we talk about injuries and things like that, and the amount of casualties that we've seen, do you know how many lives have been lost on either side at this point, or is that still kind of fluid? Obviously, that changes very rapidly.
According to our data, Russians during those 9 days lost more than 10,000 soldiers. So it's a huge number, even for a big country as Russia.
Mm-hmm.
But still, concerning Ukrainian losses, I believe it's maybe 2 or 3 times less. So we are only defending, we are not attacking. But still, it's also a big number for us, and we are not happy with that. Plus, this number includes many civilians which were injured during Russian bombing or missile attacks,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes us not unhappy but furious. Putin expected that with this bombing we will become patient and good listeners to Putin words, but it was done in vice versa way. We became simply furious about Putin and his methods of killing people.
And I mean, he's definitely challenged Ukraine and definitely made some moves that have been really, really tough to swallow and to understand, because we're seeing the power plant there, the largest one in Europe, was part of an attack. It was an adjacent building basically had caught fire. There was a lot of worry that that would be the next Chernobyl. Obviously, that fire is out now today. Those crews, the crews that were on standby remain on standby until really they're given the all clear. But from my understanding, it's really hard to get in there because the attacks just haven't stopped.
Oh, it's a kind of, if Putin with this invasion of Ukraine presented new reality in Europe, very unknown and unfamiliar for many top Europeans, with attacking nuclear power station, he breaks all possible and impossible world rules. Because even terrorist states were confused when they realized that any kind of rocket started from Russian side into nuclear power station could provoke not Chernobyl, it's 10 times bigger than Chernobyl catastrophe. Because this nuclear power plant in Zaporozhye, which they attacked last night, it's the largest nuclear power plant in the whole Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So if something goes wrong, it's not about Zaporozhye, it's not about Ukraine, it's about Eurasia for sure, on both sides, European Union and Russia. And maybe 2 or 3 times it will circle around the edge, as it happened during catastrophe in Japan or in Ukraine on nuclear power stations.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the game anymore. IAEA will come with the fast inspection to Chernobyl and Zaporizhia power plants to check what's going on there in recent days, I believe. And also, we expect reaction from NATO and European Union, at least to establish free flights to like to close air over the nuclear power stations, because it's not a joke. One thing is army is fighting army, brutal thing when army is fighting civilians, but when army is attacking nuclear power station, it's a challenge for the whole humanity.
Absolutely. Okay, so this is an image from that night. Last night, the nuclear plant was the nearby building
Yep.
was on fire. Those silos, those cones are very protected. So I know that fire crews had to go in and out. They were really struggling to extinguish that fire. But that good news is today it's out. But obviously something to continue watching because those forces are still obviously around there. Now, you mentioned that Kyiv is not surrounded right now. Let's go back to that a little bit because there was that conversation where the mayor was kind of taken out of context. He kind of misspoke, he had said when he was talking to the Associated Press, saying that they were encircled. So you're saying right now that you're confirming, like he said, he misspoke. Kyiv is not surrounded. What is the status of Kyiv right now? I know that's where you are right now.
We have significant troops of Russia coming from the Belarus side, from the north, and also from the eastern north, on the left bank of Dnieper River. And Dnieper River separates Kyiv in two pieces, left and right part. It's a big problem that they are attacking with massive bombing on of the residential area of small cities around Kyiv and small towns. But since yesterday, we started to counterattack, and we did it quite successfully. The thing we are missing, it's the aviation to kill this 40 miles column, which is heading from the north. And definitely we need more javelins and stingers to feel much safer with their tanks and military aircraft.
Now, we know about the different sanctions and things that many countries have now put into place over the last week. There's a lot of kind of pushback right now to the US for continuing to purchase Russian oil. What do you, as a politician, as a diplomat, what do you think the US needs to be doing right now?
First of all, we are very grateful for everything you already did, frankly saying. And I always say that without your help, Ukraine would almost definitely fail. And we fight only because not only our courage and high spirit, but also that you help us financially, military, and politically. And it's very good to have coalition led by United States against Russia, including Ukraine, in this war. But what is missing definitely it's air. I cannot accept and I cannot understand when thousands of civilians are bombed every hour in Ukraine. And NATO and European Union say, oh, don't worry, be calm. Everything will be resolved soon. Or maybe it's a long run, take a deep breath. How? If people are dead or people are injured, what kind of deep breath should I take? So definitely, I would urge United States to be leader in this process to have non-flight zone in Ukraine for Russian aviation. Just tell them, guys, one military aircraft and it is down. No talks. NATO already supplies a lot of weapons to us, javelin, stingers, I mentioned. They are not afraid that it's a kind of beginning of World War III because of that. So if you establish no flight zone, so it's the same thing. Or if there is some problem with that NATO aircrafts is going to attack Russian aircrafts, give those aircrafts to Ukraine. We will find some volunteers of US veterans which are coming in hundreds right now to Ukraine to help us fight Russia. I believe that there are many brilliant pilots among those veterans, and they would be definitely too happy to fight Russians once again in their life career. So there are many tools, but we need to do something. No talks will prevent from killing people. I mean, civilian people. And secondly, definitely those sanctions really work. Today, for the first time, Putin recognized that those sanctions are very painful, that he is very unhappy that some of the strategic partners of Russia closed partnership with Moscow. And it's a new reality for Moscow. Definitely, as he says, we will find the way out, but he understands that it's a catastrophe for him. Mm-hmm. All rating agency announced day before yesterday and today that Russian ratio is 0. So it's default state. Mm-hmm. They do not have even enough money to pay the debts. Not about the development, not about the wars or invasion. To pay the debt, they are out of money. And it will come more and more. Plus sanctions. I was very happy to hear from Biden just recently, and I hope to see it in reality next week, that Putin will be prosecuted by sanctions, by very severe sanctions. And all his illegal incomes, and there are billions, I would say that maybe he is among the richest person in the world, if to calculate all his shadow money. And his friends, oligarchs, will be prosecuted, will be sanctioned, and will be getting rid of their property all over the world. Mm-hmm. If it works, it's a good thing for coup d'etat in Kremlin, because Russia is always very well known. They don't love revolutions, they don't love kind of democracy rules, but they adore to kill one Tsar and to appoint another Tsar after.
Mm-hmm. Now you're talking about that no talks are going to stop this. Well, there's a lot of conversations, though, that are being had and things being said on the U.S. side. For instance, one of our Republican senators, Lindsey Graham, just last night, calling for the assassination of Vladimir Putin on live TV and also on his Twitter accounts, which I've shared as well. So what is your take on that? And I mean, is that opening up a wound or a box, or that are we going to be able to put the toothpaste back in the tube on that one?
If there is a CIA agent present in our conversation or in our interview, maybe he would give a better advice how to perform in this sensible operation. But concerning assassination of Putin, if his closest surrounding will be very unhappy with him and will understand clearly that Putin is not the advantage but the great loss for them, he will be assassinated. With polonium, as they did in Great Britain and all over Europe, with some special pills, or with coronavirus. Who knows why he is sitting so far during all those meetings in Kremlin. So I believe that his life is under risk because invasion to Ukraine is total failure. Economy of Russia is collapsing. And it's an obvious example that Putin's policy was not successful. But we cannot rely on some smart guys in Kremlin to kill Putin. We should do our homework. And I believe that those sanctions should be increased dramatically. And I believe that we should find some more or less adequate political elite in Russia to replace Putin. It's their will and it's their country to be governed. If we are lucky with that, it's a chance for everybody to stop the war, to have better future, safe future, to fly together to Mars or whatever we wanted to fly. But in my personal opinion, as a man who loves history, it's not about Putin. It's Kremlin policy. They always do the same. If you check Soviet Union history, they always lived under the sanctions. Maybe one exemption, it's World War II, when world united against Hitler. All other periods of Soviet history under sanctions. Russian Empire during Tsar rule, almost always under sanctions. So they got used to sanctions. They got used to Western pressure. They know how to trade, how to trick, how to lie, in order to get the best benefit. So I think that we should do together what to do with Russia as a whole, but not only with Putin as the serial maniac of the 21st century.
Now, obviously, when we first started this conversation, we talked about really what pushed us into this space, and by us, I mean Ukraine and Russia, as the whole world watches. Back in 1997, when he was declaring, if you move east, there's basically going to be war. I mean, that's years ago, right? That's years. A lot has transpired and a lot has happened in that much time. So, what really can you break down for me? What are the impacts of Ukraine joining NATO? What's the problem and what's the benefit?
Uh, for Russia, there is no problem at all, because when he says that if Ukraine joins NATO, the missile from Kyiv or Dnipro will fly to Moscow only 7 minutes, this missile will come much faster from Baltic states, which are NATO member states. And for Putin, the problem is that Ukraine cannot be independent. And he understands, according to his favorite teacher, Lenin and Stalin, that there is no Russia without Ukraine. So, in his personal way of thinking, Ukraine should be under Russia. No talks, no other compromises. This is the only game he's ready to play. But we are not happy with that, and we do not agree with that. And we believe that world should be safe. Ukrainians are great people. We are great inventors with a great sense of humor. And I don't want Ukrainians to become the best killing nation in the world. We are not naturally born killers. We are smart and I would say very intelligent. And one thing about humor, I was looking at, in my battalion when we were attacking Russians, and half of them, even during attack, were smiling. Not with nervous smile, but just being happy, and they know that they are doing right things. They are fighting enemy. So I believe that Putin made a very big mistake attacking Ukraine, and it's a kind of last story for him in his lifetime.
Now, I mean, obviously, 1997 was, I don't do math very well, but it was a long time ago, enough for, but it is in our lifetime. It is in our generational lifetime. So you're talking about Ukrainians aren't like Russian people, but in our lifetime, you were part of Russia, right? So how has that shifted? What was the, like, we're our own country now, so we're different than we were 15 years ago, 20 years ago?
We've never been a part of Russia, and we were occupied by
USSR,
Russia.
I suppose, would be the Soviet Union,
Pardon me?
right? I said, I'm sorry, I guess USSR would be better to say.
Yeah, we were occupied by Russia during Russian Empire time and also during Soviet time. If you talk to Baltic states, to Lithuanian, Estonian, and you say that you are part of Russia or part of Soviet Empire, they would say, no, we were occupied.
Okay.
And this is the truth. And the biggest mistake of Russians, they believe that we were part of them. They say that we are great Russia and there are a lot of small parts. But the reality and the history is that when Ukraine existed, there were no Russia yet. When Lithuanian kingdom was present, there were only bears and some hunters with spears in Moscow territory. So it's a big story, and we can talk for hours about that. But it's I would say, biggest confusion of Kremlin, that they believe it's our part. And it was lost. Somebody has stolen it from us, or something went wrong. But we say, no, it went right. We were never part of you. You simply took us away from Europe, occupied us, killed us, and said, we are the one.
So I know that you had mentioned that the U.S. has helped substantially, and likely, Ukraine wouldn't be where they are necessarily without a lot of that help. The US is obviously part of NATO. Ukraine wants to be part of NATO. Russia is part of NATO. So, with all of these European countries part of that organization, that treaty, why is the US, why is it the US's, I guess, responsibility to go in here when it's not really part of things?
It's a very good question, and thank you for posing that. Because I believe it's a great confusion for many Americans, especially after Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
Why should we get into Ukrainian business or in Europe's business and to spend another billions of dollars, or maybe even risking life of our soldiers in future?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? The issue and the answer is all yours to decide. If you want to be nation number one and to be proud of United States, you should also take the all risks about that, because everybody will attack your status, and everybody would like to say, though, US, it's such a miserable country, it's not influential at all, China is better, or Russia is great. What kind of history of United States if Russia is a great empire? And there are many other competitors and rivals to arise and to say that there is no United States interest in the whole world. And it's a big risk for your country then.
Mm-hmm.
Then you become smaller and smaller with each decade. Just recall history of many great nations in the past.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as they get used to that they are great and do nothing to prove their greatness, they disappear.
Mm-hmm.
No more greatness, they are gone. So I believe that I'd love to see a statue of Biden somewhere in Washington after many years, but at this stage, I'm 100% sure that Biden deserves the statue in Ukraine, because what he did in Ukraine, he stopped from Russian aggression, he stopped from Russian occupation, and he actually rescued Europe from Russian expansion and united Western allies, which are now speaking almost one voice policy. It was simply impossible 2 years ago. Just recall all those statements coming from Germany, France, Poland, United Kingdom, Washington. They were all different. They were talking about one topic, but with a high level of different answers. Right now, they speak one language, and it's very good for the strong union, because you know what you want and you know how to get to the result of your wish.
Mm-hmm. Now, I always have to look at things that aren't, that kind of make us a little uncomfortable and play the devil's advocate because I'm a journalist.
Sure. Yeah,
So,
it's your job.
We often talk about how, it's like there's a narrative like Russia bad, and we've grown up watching movies where we see the bad guy, right? But we never hear the bad guy story. Well, we have heard Putin's story. He said back in 97, don't do this. And in Ukraine moved forward with the application and with that desire to want to be in NATO. So knowing that he had that on his plan to attack if you sought NATO out, why move forward with NATO?
Because it's up to us to decide. And Putin is not our president. Our president is Mr. Zelensky. We could be happy or unhappy with him, but if we are unhappy, we vote for another one. But in Putin's mind, do you remember when Putin was firstly elected?
Mm-hmm.
It was 23 years ago, quite a while. And he's ready to spend another 23 years as a president of Russia. No problem with that, but there is a problem with democracy. And if there is no competition within political system, this system is going to die with 100% guarantee. And this is exactly what's happening in Russia. No competition inside, only one Tsar or one leader to give commands, and system is not competitive. Concerning Putin's wish, it's his problem. You know, when Soviet Union collapsed, nobody could foresee that collapse. If you ask any politicians from the West in 1990 what's going to happen with Soviet Union, is it going to collapse? Everybody would answer you those times, no.
Mm,
Soviet Union would last for decades, for centuries. We got used to that picture. And then 1 year after, there is no Soviet Union.
hmm
What was the choice for Russia in that time? There were millions of hungry people looking for food in Russia. United States gave their hand to Russians, feed them, and said, guys, we take care about you, we'll help you because we are friends, we are partners, we have common future. What Russians did, they cheated you. They took your money, they established oligarchs, they established great massive corruption to destroy even European Union and many institutions in the West, and then started to threaten with nuclear weapon, started with the threatening with invasion of other countries. So I think that Russia made the clear decision after collapse of Soviet Union. There were two options: to become United Kingdom after United Kingdom was empire and lost their colonies, and to say, okay, we're getting this picture of the world. It's a new picture. We get used to that. We simply become prosperous nation,
mm,
or to become a pirate terrorist. Russia has chosen to become a terrorist and a pirate. So
mm.
this is the end of their story.
Now, do you think, again, having to go and ask questions that sometimes can make us uncomfortable, are there, because this is an ongoing battle, this has been going on for quite a while. Do you think that the administration that's currently in place in the United States has pushed back enough? Do you think this would have happened under the former administration?
Mm, you know, it's a tricky question because you would like me to intervene into internal politics of the United States.
Well, I
But
just got to ask, you
I,
know?
I will just give you my humble answer in this way.
Okay.
I believe that Ukraine is lucky to have Biden as the president of the United States. He knows Ukraine, he understands Ukraine, and he understands the value of Europe and Ukraine for Europe. And it's a great advantage not only for Ukraine but also for United States, because if battle for Europe is lost for United States, the next battle in Asia is lost for United States.
Mm,
And it's not kind of only I would say special case of Russia. It's a special case of China and Russia,
hmm
because Russia is not that independent as we would like to think, and even if as Putin would like to think.
hmm
Russia is under great influence of China, and many things which are undertaken now by Russians, they are blessed by Chinese.
Okay, so
Until maybe last 2 days, when China is trying to change their position in very special way, which is also very tricky why they are doing so.
why don't you break that down a little bit for some of our viewers? Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Uh, I think that Beijing is very happy with that situation Russia is in right now, because they are getting extremely weak, and you can buy everything in Russia starting from April 2022 for 1 cent,
Mm. Hmm.
almost everything. There is no, just a look at the worth of Gazprom or many Russian banks. What was the price and what is the price now? 3 times cheaper, 10 times cheaper, 20 times cheaper.
Mm.
It's good for China
Mm.
because nobody would buy toxic Russian assets except Chinese.
Very interesting. It's some interesting insight there for sure. Now I know that going back to a little bit on how the U.S. has helped. You were talking about veterans and people that have joined in on the fight. Is there still a need for more volunteers? Are U.S. citizens invited to come over to Ukraine and just start fighting, or what does that look like? And I know that I know that President Zelensky also was talking about, you know, funding and reimbursing, and kind of some of those military people were getting more pay, but volunteers aren't being paid, right?
Volunteers are not paid because they are volunteers.
Mhm.
In case of territorial defense, maybe we are paid, but I do not know. I haven't seen anything in my pocket, and it's
Okay.
not the reason to fight for. But concerning international volunteers, it's really important. You know, one thing if you are fighting alone on your own, and quite different thing if you see many other guys coming from the whole world to say you are doing right thing, you are fighting for right thing, I'm with you, my country is with you. And we are applauding and very grateful to all those meetings which were organized all over the world in support of Ukraine. And my US friends were calling me all those days telling, you cannot believe Washington is yellow blue, whole Washington is yellow blue, so in the colors of Ukrainian flag.
Mhm.
And there are many other things which inspires and make it easier for you to achieve the goal for the whole world.
Mm.
uh, Concerning what kind of help do we need more, I would say that there are a lot of volunteers of Ukrainian origin, and especially if we are talking about territorial defense. uh, People to take guns in their hands are much more, many more than guns in itself. So maybe we would need also another military supply of ammo and guns to fight Russians because they outnumber us. We have only 40 millions in Ukraine, and Russians are almost 150 million, so 3 times more. But still, I would say that it's very good that people know about Ukraine. It's very good that people are ready to help Ukraine, and 100% sure that Ukraine will help also NATO and European Union in case there is a fight upcoming in future.
I mean, we were talking about there's so many Americans that are frustrated that this is even happening because we just got out of Afghanistan. So, what would you say to those Americans who are either doubting what's going on, who are frustrated with the situation, or just have questions? What would you say to my fellow Americans?
I would say first of all, thank you, and maybe not even for money, but for the passion and belief in Ukraine. And second issue, you cannot always talk about the price of something. Sometimes, if you look into Elon Musk, I'm fan of him.
Mm-hmm.
He spends hundreds of millions. Somebody, those are money of U.S. taxpayers. Sometimes it's his own money,
Mm-hmm.
but he spends for hundreds of millions for some dream. But when he gets this dream in his hand, everybody is extremely happy to watch his SpaceX or Tesla or something else
Mm-hmm.
operational. The same is with Ukraine. You help us to have safer world and for democracy to win, because right now it's the main battle ongoing. Who is going to win? Democracy, such as United States, European Union, Ukraine as a model case, or tyranny, such as
Mm-hmm.
Russia, Syria, China, and so on. Uh, I don't want to threat Americans, but for 30 years, Ukrainians lived in the world of peace and positive. We would never believe that story which is happening somewhere in Asia or in Africa with permanent wars will come once to Ukraine. And now war is in our country.
Mm-hmm.
So I never know what will happen next after occupation of Ukraine. Maybe Russia will go west, but Russia can go also east and to raise the issue of Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
Why not get it back? Just a casus belli issue. And there are a lot of politicians raising their voice about that. How would you react? Two nuclear powers, one Alaska issue, and Russia is saying, I'm going to attack you tomorrow, let's say. Or without any saying, just attacking you tomorrow morning. What to do? And it's not kind of, super story. It's what is happening with Ukraine. Until 2014, we would never believe that Russia is going to attack us.
Mm.
And since 2014, it's a normality. And since 2022, it's the total normality, unfortunately.
Now, when we're talking about all of those different issues and what could happen and kind of speculation of where Putin might go next, what his, what would happen depending on what happens in Ukraine. Now, is how does this end? How does this end for everybody basically? What needs to happen and what's the outcome?
I don't believe that Putin will come to some compromise about the issue of Ukraine, or I don't believe that any kind of peace could be done until he is alive. Because if he does so without full occupation of Ukraine and without going farther to the west, this kind of blitzkrieg but different way,
Mm.
he should to commit suicide in Kremlin because he recognizes in the wrong thing and wrong planning of himself and his closest team.
Sorry. So you're saying that if Putin's alive, basically this is going to continue?
Yeah, until his death. It's my personal belief, but for him as for politician, I don't have any other resolution of this scenario. And he says it and repeats it every second day, that everything is according to the plan. We are not going to change anything. We are going to fight Ukraine and to get rid of Nazis and to get rid of NATO influence and so on. So he's not changing. Everybody in Russia understands right now that he is wrong. But in Russia, it's like a concentration camp. You can understand that everything is wrong, but you are in prison. And if you say it loud, you are whether killed or tortured or without food for weeks. This is the end. That's why they are not protesting, because they got used to live like slaves. And elite of Russia, if they do not agree with Putin, then they simply flee from the country. Look into Abramovich or Chichvarkin or any other Russian oligarchs. When they felt unhappy, they simply left. That's it.
So, I mean, but we all could probably say confidently that Putin, with his confidence in himself, is probably not going to take his own life.
If he's asked about that, I would say that Stalin was not also ready or willing to take his own life, but his colleagues did that. Or in case of Lenin, it was totally the same. He didn't die natural death. He was poisoned. And many other tsars of Russia in the previous history were poisoned by their circles.
Mm.
It's a natural status of running the country in Russia.
Now, interesting for sure to hear from you, to learn what's going on your side of things. How many civilians, do you know how many civilian fighters there are right now? I don't know how many people have joined in on this fight.
I will tell you my figures. I am in 206 Battalion of Territorial Defense. We were hoping to get 150 to 200 people on our boat. Right now we have 500, and there are people coming and coming. We are out of weapon for them. That's why we say that, look, guys, we would love to take you on board, but unfortunately we cannot give you all ammunition and helmets and all other stuff needed to fight Russians.
I guess that's a good problem to have. You have a lot of people, but now you need the ammo and the firearms to do that. And correct me if I'm wrong. There were some photos going around, and I don't know if you even witnessed this yourself, of those wooden guns and the cardboard guns, right? Those were, from what I understood and what I read, but please confirm or deny this, that those were more of a practice, a training tool, because a lot of these folks haven't even held a gun before.
Yeah, that's true. It was only for practicing. So when territorial defense was established under the law, it happened very beginning of 2022. So we simply got people together who wants to practice, who wants to imagine himself or herself in the army
Hmm.
for a couple of days. So it was the very start. But right now it's a different situation. So everybody is with real guns. And, it was also big discussion in the society. Should we legalize weapons for everybody or should we not? And in our case in Ukraine, I'm with my own weapon,
Hmm.
with my own Kalashnikov and many other rifles. But in case of Ukraine, you were only allowed to be a hunter. And then if you are a hunter, you are allowed to buy a machine gun, but it's only for single shots, for single bullets.
Hmm.
It's not for automatic shooting.
Hmm.
And when the war started, you can go to any military station, you present your passport, your ID, and you get machine gun the same day.
Hmm.
Right now, it's very simple. It's like United States. So if you're not a psycho, if you're looking good, and you're ready to fight, you are given a gun, and simply your ID is recorded. If something goes wrong, then you are responsible for this wrong thing. But right now, this long time social discussion about legalization of weapon is resolved without during one day during wartime.
Yeah, will be interesting to see what happens there. Now, I also understand that um, that some of the folks that have joined in on the fight have been CEOs. You're obviously a diplomat. You're the infrastructure minister for some time. We've also seen biathletes competing. A gentleman that was just competing in the Winter Olympics is now on the
Yep.
front lines. A 19-year-old biathlete from Ukraine was killed fighting. What does
Yes,
that mean to
unfortunately.
you to be part of something like this? I mean, for people to join in on this fight and to risk their lives and I don't mean to say they have so much going for them, but they have a lot to lose joining in on this fight.
I would answer in one word. It's a purity. You know, if you are 100% origin, you could be run by your emotions and you do not hesitate. You know that you do right thing. There was also another motivation for me. During our last 800 years of neighboring with Russia, uh, each second generation of Ukrainians was fighting Russians,
Mm,
which were trying to occupy our lands.
mm,
And this particular moment, I would like to stop this stuff. I don't want my grandsons or granddaughters fighting Russians once again.
mm.
I want to have final kind of settlement of Russian issue, whether they are democratic or if not, they follow simply the destiny of Nazis Reich,
Mm.
split it and forgotten.
So obviously a lot of moving parts and a lot of things to keep an eye on over the coming days. Is there anything else that while I still have you, and thank you for your time, I know you're busy. Is there anything else that you want to share? Is there anything that we haven't touched on that's important?
Uh, I would like simply to say once again at the end of our discussion, great appreciation for everything you do. You pose very right questions. You double checking, but it's very important that you feel responsible for others
Hmm.
because if you construct a normal environment for your country around you, you feel safe.
Hmm.
You are not attacked. Your kids and families are not under threat
Hmm.
of any nuclear attack or missile attack or Kalashnikov attack.
Hmm.
You know that you can plan about Mars or you can plan about future of your kids graduating from Cambridge, Oxford, or Boston University.
Hmm.
But if you are invaded, if there is a kind of maniac or psycho running with a knife around your house, you are not safe.
Hmm. And that's how you feel right now. I'm
Yep.
putting that onto you, but that's how I would imagine you're using that as the example of how Ukrainians are feeling right now.
Yep. That's true. That's true.
Yeah. Well, I would love to stay in touch. I would love to continue communicating with you. So keep me posted. Stay safe out there. We'll continue to try to sift through the misinformation and everything that we can on our end. But it's certainly tricky. It's certainly a tough dance to do on this side because I mean I don't even know who to trust right now. You know, it's tough.
You know, truth will always prevail. Just believe me. And we are on the right, truthful side. Thank you for this interview.
Thank you so much. We'll talk
Okay.
soon. Stay safe, my friend. And again, I appreciate your time. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.